Shovelware is a plague that persists in pretty much all game console libraries. Companies who want to make a quick buck put together shoddy and cheaply made video games and then throw them up on store shelves for unsuspecting parents to buy them and then ruin little Johnny's Christmas. This issue is especially prominent in consoles that are super successful, and the Wii in particular was one of the best-selling consoles of all time. Couple that with a control scheme that was aimed at non-gamers and casuals, it was the perfect storm. Just go into any Gamestop and somewhere near the back, I'm sure you'll find a rack full of Wii games you've never heard of, all priced at $1 to $3. You could pick up a whole stack of hot trash for just a measly Hamilton. And that's exactly what I did.
So, since Christmas just passed, I thought I'd take a look at this one first. It's a platform game based on the Santa Claus is Coming to Town Christmas special. I can already tell by the quality of the animation on the loading screen that this is gonna be just a wonderful game. A loading screen, by the way, that happens to take place before even the title screen. I can't wait. So the game opens up just as the movie does. Camera cutting to these dead-eyed animals and then centers in on a Walmart version of this guy who then starts narrating the story. Like the movie, the cutscene opens up with baby Santa being left on this guy's doorstep and trusting him with the life of this newborn child, but Santa immediately gets yeeted and sent to an orphanage. As the story goes, though, the guard who's supposed to be transporting baby Santa to the orphanage fucking loses him on the way there. It says he lost him, but I mean, he really doesn't look at all like he lost something. He looks like he just littered. So some animals save him and deliver him to a bunch of elves who adopt him as one of their own. Randomly cut to like 25 years later, and now we're adult Santa in a platforming game. I feel like perhaps I've missed some important details here. Oh god, look at that frame rate. So in the first level, you just walk to the end of the stage while collecting snowflakes. You can throw toys on the ground too, but that mechanic isn't explained yet, so I had no idea what it was even for. So you make it to the end of the stage, and then you get thrown into a minigame where you have to make toys. If you've ever wondered how the elves make the toys for Santa, this is how they do it. We go through another stage where Santa now has to make it to a place called Somber Town to deliver toys. I'd elaborate on the level, but honestly, these levels are essentially all the same, just a mess of wintry assets thrown together. After a couple stages, we arrive at Somber Town, but upon getting there, that fat bastard from earlier, who happens to be the mayor, but honestly is more akin to a dictator, trips on a toy and claims to have broken his funny bone. And no one in the room wants to speak up and tell him that he's full of shit and that isn't a thing. Anyway, he blames it on the toy that he tripped on, and then this happens.
Either they go or I go, and I am certainly not going. Now take this down. Toys are hereby declared illegal, immoral, unlawful, and anyone found with a toy in his possession will be placed under arrest and thrown in the dungeon.
Shit. Wait, did you say dungeon?
So now it's our job to go around town delivering now illegal goods to children. Honestly, I played a bunch more of this, but it was all the same repetitive shit. All the stages are basically the same random amalgamation of generic assets and no cohesive order, and I regret spending as much time on it as I did because I'm not even putting it all into this video. If I did, this would just be a Santa Claus is Coming to Town video. We gotta move on. Welcome to possibly the most boring officially released video game I've ever played in my life. It's a game released by National Geographic, and I'm gonna be honest, I had no idea they published or made games in any capacity. Then again, this is the Wii, and that library is the fucking Wild West. You play as a bunch of extinct sea creatures roaming the depths of the ocean, but I only ever got to play as 2 of them because they need to be unlocked, and this game is so gruelingly slow and boring that if I played it any longer than I had, I think I would have become extinct myself. I've always loved the ocean, but as boring as this game is, it's also fucking terrifying. Despite the fact that there's other creatures in the ocean, it comes off as very desolate and isolated, and that uneasy, empty feeling is immediately flipped when you get randomly attacked and killed by another animal with no way to defend yourself. Think for a second, you're out on the ocean in the water and no one is around you. It's totally quiet, and then you get attacked by a shark. Anyway, the idea is to go around collecting fossils to complete the skeletons of other extinct creatures, which you can then play as. And the different animals have different abilities that give you access to new areas, kind of like getting power-ups in a Metroid game. Unlike Metroid though, this is slow and boring to the point of frustration. I kept either getting eaten or running out of air, all while fighting with a really terrible camera, so after about a half hour, I couldn't bring myself to continue playing. Here's a game where you work at a salon in LA as a new hairdresser. The art style is gross. So you start a new game and you get to create your character, whom you never actually see. Not that it matters, because the options are some of the most generic and limited I've ever seen. We're gonna go with Anthony, the platinum blonde heartthrob. Our first client is Lorenzo Lovelost, who apparently has a big date tonight and needs his hair washed. I'd like to reiterate, washing his hair is a special occasion and he's going to a salon for it. I'll commend his enthusiasm, but what he probably really needs is a course on personal hygiene. You know the old proverb, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to wash his own goddamn hair and he'll stop being a filthy, greasy slob. Maybe. I'm already seeing immediate inconsistencies. This dude's hair was definitely not this long. There's QA hard at work. So he washes dumbass hair and this sucker actually gives us 193 hard-earned dollars for it. I really can't imagine being so useless that you'd need to pay someone upwards of $200 to wash your hair. Alright, so next client wants us to blow dry her hair. Does anybody want an actual haircut, or is my next client gonna come in and ask me to do their laundry? Finally, we're ready to cut some hair. First we wash, then cut, then straighten, and... Ew. Dragon Blade, Wrath of Fire. I'm not sure if this game was trying to be like Zelda or Fable or what, but man, this one's bad. And it's weird because it does have random elements of something that may have been able to at least be an okay game, but here, let me explain. So the game starts off with some exposition. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't pay too much attention to it. It's really just your generic medieval Game of Rings, dragon, swordy, sword, knight, and magic mythical bullshit scenario. And before you start typing away angrily in the comment section, I'm not knocking Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or anything, but I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. So after some shit I didn't really pay attention to, we're thrown into a little tutorial area where we're given a sword. And since this is a Wii game, of course the way to use it is to flail your arms around like a maniac. Human terms. Yeah, you're right. Got no idea what a sword is. Funny, because without knowing that, I'd have no idea what this sentence was trying to tell me, because in the context of them assuming I didn't know what the word sword meant, it would inherently make this sentence impossible to understand. Anyway, as you can probably guess, the controls aren't responsive in the slightest, and you can immediately tell right from the start that the combat in this game is gonna be an absolute nightmare. By the way, I was stuck in this tiny intro area for a good 10 minutes with no idea how to proceed, and it wasn't until I got frustrated and started wildly attacking these glowy stones that I was able to leave the area. Now, it did tell me I had to attack them, but it told me to stab them. You don't have to actually stab, which is an option when attacking, but I thought I was doing it wrong because you need to hit it like 20 fucking times before it does something, but the game did nothing to convey to me that attacking it was actually working, so that was a fun waste of time. I find it kind of funny how the tutorial didn't explain it well, because every time you take more than 3 steps in this game, it stops you right in your tracks to not only have a tutorial pop up, but the camera fades in and out to a totally different angle, almost like a mini cutscene, which immediately sucks away any shred of immersion this game had going. So your girlfriend dies, and then the game really starts. You know, I was kind of getting into it a little bit. I even got to a boss fight, which I did end up beating. It was bland, but it wasn't the worst thing I've ever played. There were some elements of battle strategy, albeit with terribly unresponsive controls. And you know, I was starting to almost like the game, just a little bit, until I got to this shit. And herein lies what seems to me to be an issue I'm sure persists throughout the entire game. Way too many throwaway enemies used to pad out an empty game. I swear to you, every 5 steps I took in this stage, another wave of enemies would pop up that I'd need to mindlessly hack away at. Not too far into the stage, this bullshit cluster of enemies popped up, and at that point, my arm was getting tired, and upon seeing this, I noped the disc right out of my Wii. This is a 3D platformer themed around rock and roll or something. There's musical instruments scattered around the entire game, and then also TV remotes for some reason. I'm not kidding, they're in every stage and I have no idea what that has to do with music. You play as Elvis. I'm not kidding, they really named him Elvis. And you go around the stage collecting CDs. I don't know why CDs. I don't know why they didn't go with vinyl records. That would kind of fit the theme better. Anyway, you collect the CDs and then that's how you advance to the next stage. It's like Stars and Mario, it's like Jiggies and Banjo, you know by now. Par for the course with these cheap Wii games, the controls are bad and become more frustrating when it comes time to try to attack enemies. This is one of the worst I've seen though. It literally just does not respond most of the time, and it's typically much easier just to avoid enemies altogether instead of trying to engage them. Also frustrating is the fact that to jump, you need to make like an up motion with the nunchuck. You know, the thing you're using to control the character. I never got used to this and will never understand why they wouldn't just map it to the A button on the Wii remote. You can't pan the camera either. The only way to adjust it is to press down on the D-pad, which instead of moving the camera to a different angle in real time, it just kind of snaps behind you abruptly, which, as you can imagine, is extremely disorienting. Because you don't see the camera angle actually get to move, you completely lose sense of where the hell you are. Everything about this just screams budget game. Every stage I played was just a bunch of the same assets arranged in a different way. What a waste of time. Also, this isn't a glitch either. This is how you get to the end of this stage. Ah, there it is. You hear that? That iconic Icarly theme song. You know the one. With this game, I can finally know what it's like to create my very own show on the internet. So, there's an Icarly game on the Wii, and it's basically a collection of 5 minigames that you play over and over and is tied together by a really bad story. And I don't mean to say the writing in the Icarly TV show are bad either. I mean whoever wrote the script for this game definitely never had any hand in writing for the show. It's like they took the humor from Icarly or Drake and Josh, and instead of trying to write something that emulates that kind of style, they clearly didn't understand why those shows were funny, and they just played off of the it's so wacky! It's wacky! And because of that, it just comes off as badly written, and it seems like a ripoff, but it isn't. And the fact that the actual cast voiced the game makes it even more off-putting. Here's basically the entire game. Instant message conversations, followed by some of the shallowest minigames I've ever played. And I've played Sonic Shuffle. The plot is the typical Neville is a little asshole and is trying to ruin the show, and you have to stop him. The minigames are supposed to be the segments of the show, but it's just the same shit over and over, and it somehow advances the plot. Also, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the show, but for those of you who are, I'm sure you know the whole bit about Neville using the word rue. Well, they drive that joke, if you can even call it that, so far into the ground, it's absurd. It's like they were like, yeah, it's funny, he said rue. Let's make it a thing, sprinkle it throughout the entire game 47,000 times. I'm not joking. It's painful, the amount of times that they used that as a joke. I actually recorded gameplay of this game maybe 3 years ago and intended on doing a whole episode on it. And I even wrote a good chunk of a script, but this game is just so empty that there wasn't even enough to write about. That's how repetitive it is. I couldn't even make fun of it for long enough to get good content out of it. And I think that's a testament to the amount of content that's actually in the game. Also, they made the entire cast look just so gross. And last but not least is the game I spent the least amount of time on, and yet found myself the most frustrated with. I'll start off by saying one thing. Tank controls! Doesn't really look like a game that should have tank controls, right? Man, I don't even know what this game is supposed to be. You're supposed to be like a kid playing with his toy army men, but for some reason you're shrunken down to their size and the game never explains why. I mean, I get it if he's playing pretend, but this just doesn't make any sense. If he was pretending that he's fighting with a bunch of army men, why would he still be in his fucking room? So you're supposed to go around the stage collecting these crates, and once you collect them, you advance to the next stage. Well, I never cleared the first stage. Shooting enemy army men before they shoot you is almost impossible because of the controls, and once you die, you start all the way over from the beginning and you move at a snail's pace, so restarting the entire stage is one of the most frustrating things I've ever experienced in a while, and I've played quite a few frustrating games in my day. I tried, I really did. I played all these games till I either got bored or annoyed, but this one, I raged straight up. By the third try and failure, I was so fed up that I actually stood up and said out loud,
"Fuck this game. Don't care about the footage. I'm done."
Hey, thanks for watching my video. If you want to see more, there's a couple other ones you can click right there. And if you click that subscribe button, hopefully my videos will pop up in your feed. And if you want to help me eat food and not die, I have a Patreon link too.